Hello everypony, my name is Moonlight and welcome to my studio, Dead Space. So I guess you can say this is my rather really late Halloween special. Do apologize, but as always, life gets in the way. So moving on, Dead Space, a survival horror game that really goes all out when it gets to the whole theme of blood and gore and lots of violence. Okay, so normally I'm not the kind of person who's into gore and all that nasty stuff, but for some reason, thanks to an awesome old friend of mine who got me into trying this franchise, the game is so much fun that it doesn't really bother me as much as it used to. Because the gameplay of this game is just out of this world. The weapons you have, the upgrades you can do, the type of fighting you can do, there's lots to say. So without getting too into spoilers, you are in the first game, well, the whole franchise, you are playing as Isaac Clarke, an engineer ship specialist who goes onto an Ishimura, which is the name of the ship, to go and repair it because of an SOS distress signal. Without the knowledge of knowing this whole place is all blacked out because it has been taken over by a huge infection that has happened among the ship, turning all the humans into nasty, and I mean really disgusting looking monsters. And they are quite terrifying at first sight. They are absolutely deceiving. And if you really look at the details closely, at the models and some of the concept art, it is pretty disgusting. But despite the gross stuff, it is a very fun and very dark game. Now, so I won't be too revealing on such subjects or getting into details on this because I know some people are quite sensitive to this. Anyways, this game series, it is supposed to be a very terrifying, and I mean really scary, dark, and very cryptic game. It goes all out with everything. The developers, they hold nothing back in putting everything they could to make this game action-packed, deep in the story, very dark, and extremely scary. Now, for me personally, I've never actually been downright afraid of anything in all three of these games. Now, I have seen others play this and have gotten the bejesus scared out of them, and it's so funny because some of those moments that they get scared at, it's not even that scary. In fact, it's some of the least scary things in the game. But jeez, it is funny. But I know, some people are more sensitive than others when it comes to jump scares and other horrifying imagery. So, I do, and I can play this game in the dark by myself at 3 in the morning and still not get terrified. But I do admit, sometimes I get a little jumped or jolted, but never an outrageous scream, afraid, shut the game off kind of thing. No, I don't get that terrified of games. Besides, it's a game. It's not like I'm physically inside the game. That'd be a whole different thing. In fact, speaking of which, they really should try to do a simulation of this game. That would be really frightening. I think a lot of people get terrified of that. But I'm getting off subject. So this series, why is it so special? Well, I think what makes this game series so special is just the gameplay and how dark and scary it can go. Like, there's no music. The only thing that you really hear besides just that gameplay action is just the sounds of the environment. Like how dark and cryptic it is. You hear creaking, you hear voices, people screaming, and it's like a giant haunted house, but it's even worse than that because in a way it kind of feels real to an actual fallout of a huge zombie-like infection. But these are not zombies, they're aliens. And they really... That's one of my favorite parts, actually, I should say, is the fact that it's not a typical zombie fallout. No, it's a huge infection caused by an alien race and a sacred artifact that they thought was the most divine, godly thing to help expand and keep their human race survival still intact, which is one of the clever things about the story of the game and the gameplay itself. So I guess this is where the whole scariness of the game really doesn't affect me, is because it's just so much fun. I love the gameplay style, the shooting, the zero gravity zones, the vacuums. Ah yes. While I'm on the subject, out of all the types of gameplay in the game, I have to say my absolute favorite parts out of all the games is the vacuums. The vacuums is a room where there's no oxygen, and it's literally giving you the feeling and imagery of what it's really like in space. everything gets, you hear nothing but hissing and wind as soon as all the oxygen is sucked out of the room you're about to go into. It is mute. There is no sound whatsoever. All you hear is Isaac's breathing, talking, or other people talking to you over the intercom, and very muffled footsteps and gunfiring noises and explosions. And that's really cool. Sometimes when I'm in those rooms, I just spend my time just looking out in space and really just admiring the beauty and design of, just this whole area. Yeah, even though some of those areas can be pretty nasty looking, but good God. I've never played any game with any space elements to it that really gave me the feeling like I'm really in space. This is what it really must be like. And it's just so fascinating, and God, I could go on for hours about how much I love those rooms. Anyways, so the story. Well, I don't want to get too revealing because I think a lot of people should go into this spoiler-free, but sometimes I kind of think they really shouldn't, because when you first get into the first Dead Space, you really don't know what's going on. There's really no explanation, but that really does add on to the fear and fright of the first game, and just the build-up all the while. But actually, there is a prologue to the first game. It's actually an animated cartoon movie that explains and shows everything that happens on the Ishimura before the game even begins, which is really neat. And I've always wondered how exactly the downfall happened, and that's literally the name, Dead Space Downfall. I totally recommend it. But there are some parts in it that really don't make sense. But you'll know what I mean once you see it and play the game. There's some parts and cutscenes that really don't make a close matchup to what the game shows, because this came out after the first game was finished and released. So it's very confusing why some scenes don't really add up. Like how some characters look, how a dramatic scene happens. It doesn't really seem to be as the same as the game was, because I was kind of expecting the exact same thing as the game was showing, at least in some of the flashbacks or stuff like that. And I wouldn't really call them flashbacks. So what else? There is also another one that takes place after the first one and before the second one. It is called Dead Space Aftermath. This is literally as it says, it is after the first game. It doesn't really say or show too much of Isaac. It just really explains what's going on about, a situation and stuff like that. It's really not that important, but there are some things that are explained into both of these that really describe how this situation happens and why it happens and how it works. It's never really told in the game much, but this is why these are here, to really show in detail about how certain things work and why they happen, which is really good. There's some things after watching both of these I didn't even realize that I never even fully understood in the series. So I strongly recommend for those who've never played this franchise to please watch the anime first. Watch at least the Downfall first. Don't watch the other one, because literally, as I said in this order, is where you should really experience Dead Space if you want to really get the story and get it in order, so it's not all that confusing. So, in the third game, yeah, a lot of people hate this. I can see why, and I totally can arguably agree with them that it is not that scary as the first two, and it just seems like a typical third-person shooter action game, which isn't a bad idea, but when you approach something like Dead Space, you're expecting something that's scary, you're alone, you're helpless, and it's dark, and it's creepy, and very nasty. This one really doesn't have much of it, but then again, the gameplay is still a lot of fun, and I really like the multiplayer option. But here's the problem with this. As cool as it is to have a friend with you online to play this cool game series with you, it's very disappointing because there's some of those missions you can't ever do unless you have a partner. But without that, you are fresh out of luck. You can't have a computer player play with you and choose character by option, but that's just the sad reality of it. Overall, Dead Space is a franchise I highly recommend to people who really love to get the fright scared out of them and love some good shooting action. So if you're really sensitive to blood and gore and very dark cryptic themes and stuff like that, I really don't recommend this to you guys. And I'm not into this normally, but like I can say a million times over, the overall gameplay and idea of this franchise as a whole is so much fun, I can't resist playing it over and over again. So, what do you all think of this game series? Do you think it's a game you would love to try? Or is it a game that you've already done? And what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it still lives up to its name to this day? I sure think it does. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this whole series. I'm Moonlight Quill, and thank you for joining me today.